What are the barriers to happiness? How do we heal? How do we maximize our potential? How do we remember who we are? How can we be of service to the world? Join the World Happiness Fest, the largest forum of happiness and well-being in the world. Visit us at www.worldhappiness.foundation. We are realizing a world with freedom, consciousness, and happiness for all.
This is Philip Kotler. I'm happy to be part of a 20-minute session during the World Happiness Fest, March 17th to 22, 2022. And my guest is Christian Sarkar, and he and I will discuss a number of things, including work we do on what is called the Wicked Seven Problems and their solutions. I want to start by introducing Christian and putting some questions to him, which I will also comment. I might say that, Christian, you are a Thinker 50, author, activist, and a city regenerator. We'll explain that later, and an artist. How would you describe your level of happiness as a person?
I'd say I'm happy at a personal level, very unhappy at a global level. Let's put it that way, in terms of what's happening with the world. And so I try to make things a little better around me if I can. And then that's sort of the challenge: is how do you deal with a world where things aren't going exactly how you think they should? And I think we're going to talk about this, the individual happiness versus societal happiness. That'll be something that we get into. Yeah.
Yes, we will get into that. And I love your distinction between being happy, but at the same time being unhappy for other reasons. So I don't know how to average the happiness. But the next question is, you are an artist, and you know many artists. Are artists generally happy people? If not, why? In fact,
Right.
Should we discourage our children who want to become an artist?
Well, no, not at all. I think, well, and this is a great question because, the famous writer, or maybe not so famous, Walker Percy, who was a Southern writer, basically described the writer as a canary in the coal mine, and the artist is the canary in the coal mine. So if the artist starts feeling uneasy with society and what's going on in the world, then the rest of us should be worried too. And if the artist ends up belly up with his feet up in the cage, like the canary in the coal mine, then we need to get out of that coal mine. And I guess that's, in a sense, artists are the early warning system for society. They're sort of the monitors of what the future is going to look like. And if you see art that's troubled, art that's disturbed, maybe something's going on that we need to look into at another level. So I do feel that artists have, and in a way you can also decide what is the function of an artist in this time, because when you have a time that's as difficult as ours, the artist who's interested in just painting happy thoughts is no longer an artist. In a sense, they've disqualified themselves, because what have they done? They've become decorators and not really interpreters of our time. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's
thank you. It's fascinating what you did say, and I'm going to, in fact, switch it to a few other professions. Can you think of a profession where most of its members are happy? Would you say that of doctors, lawyers, engineers, or are all professionals unhappy people?
Well, with COVID, there's been a lot of unhappiness all around. And in a sense, you could say, and this is not easy to say, but I think it must be said, that our professions are not resilient. And so you see what's happening with healthcare workers. Our healthcare system in the US especially is certainly not geared for public health. It's not geared to serve the public. And this is part of the problem of individual happiness versus public happiness, or the common good. Mm-hmm. So you as a rich person might be happy and you might have, good health care. But what does that matter if the rest of the world around you is falling apart and everybody else is getting COVID? So this is sort of the, you could call it Ayn Rand disease, which is the idea that a few people deserve everything. And so this is the radical individualism that we've sort of fallen into. And so if you look at what's happening to professions like healthcare, the doctors, they're overworked. Yes, they're paid well, some of them, but certainly not the essential workers, certainly not the nurses. And we're basically abusing that profession to the point where people are leaving that profession at record levels. So something has to change, and it's not perhaps the profession itself, but the administration and the process by which we manage the work that's done in that profession. And if you look at it, in the US especially when you compare it, let's say, to some of the other countries in the world that have healthcare as a human right, you see that the US really doesn't have healthcare it's a targeted healthcare, targeted just for a few customers who can afford it, and everybody else you're on your own. I saw a meme the other day that said, if you're rich in the US, you get to keep your teeth. And that was a cartoon,
Well, as a matter of fact, there are, in my own experience, some professions that produce a lot of unhappy people. When you look at the law people, and I know many of them, they are ground down. They think so much of it is not about justice, not serving justice, but making an income in a very time-consuming and unhappy way. So let's go to a big question. Is maximizing society's happiness a worthwhile goal for society? Because if it is, we got to work on all these people in different professions and pursuits and help them become happier. Or is that not a societal goal? Or let's say, is there a better societal goal than just producing a society of happy people?
Well, it depends on what you define as happiness. I guess that's where we start. If happiness is the right to do what you love and learn and grow, that's one thing. If happiness is your happiness comes from the suffering of other people and making them unhappy, then that's another story. So I would say maximizing society's happiness could be used as a formula for very evil things, because you could say that and this goes back to the greater good versus the common good, which are two different ways of looking at the same question. And the question is, should we sacrifice for society? What are the things what are the individual liberties that we sacrifice for the greater good? So today, what's the big deal here? Masks, wearing masks in public. And this goes down to this point that a lot of us in the US feel that we should not have to wear masks because it's a sacrifice that we don't want to make. Why? Because we value our individual liberty to make other people sick by coughing on them or not wearing our masks. So this is what we call liberty. The greater good point would say that, we need to do what's right for the majority of the people. Therefore, we should wear masks, because that way a majority of the people won't get sick if everybody has to wear a mask. So you can use authoritarian ways to force people to wear their masks, throw them in jail if they're not wearing masks, arrest them if they're not wearing masks. Of course, we're not doing none of those things. But that's the argument in a way of saying the greater good. And by the way, this greater good was used by a lot of totalitarian states to say that, more people will survive if we do this, therefore we need to do this. And so therefore you won't be needing your liberty or freedom anymore. And we're going to do something for the greater good. The common good is a little different. And this is where I think the common good is actually a more important way of looking at it, which says we're all in this together. And it's not really one at the expense of the other, but we're all together in this boat, and we've got to make sure that we all look after each other.
In other words, it's not a zero-sum game.
Yes.
And if we could, that's why I wrote the book, Advancing the Common Good, because
Exactly.
we need a standard to judge what makes societies move forward. But then suppose we are a society that's successful in creating a lot of happy people. Is it your observation that happy people tend to be more conservative and accept conditions, social conditions as they are? In fact, are happy people less creative and less activist in general? So maybe we don't want a stagnant society full of happy people.
Well, it goes again back to this definition of happiness. What kind of happiness are you looking for? Are you looking for, a lower birth rate, the death rate for babies being low, the well-being of society, just the health of society? That's sort of a very basic measure of well-being. Mm-hmm. But of course, there's higher levels of well-being, So am I able to express myself? Am I able to learn the things? Am I living up to my full potential? Am I able to go to college if I want? Am I able to learn things that I'm interested in? Are there barriers that block me from doing that? Is there interest? If I want to go to college, is it free, or am I being charged exorbitant amount and basically prevented from going to college? So the pursuit of happiness, as we call it, is sort of chasing the bluebird of happiness. And that's another phrase basically from Walker Percy, where he says, this American idea that we have to run around the place chasing this bluebird of happiness, that the minute we get it, it's gone. So the happiness is
destroys being happy.
Yeah. So the pursuit of happiness is the happiness, and not the actual acquisition of, let's say, the goal, which was, let's say, the yacht or going to space or going to Mars. Yeah. I mean, how happy is Elon Musk going to be on Mars?
Well, let me ask you this. I just have a few more questions, and I love your answers. If we developed a happiness pill in the laboratory to be taken once a day in the morning by everyone, would you vote for the pill to be developed and distributed?
No, of course not. Because, the happiness pill already exists. In a sense, that's what people do when they get addicted to chemicals that give them extra dopamine or serotonin or oxytocin, all these, hormones and chemicals that keep you happy in the mind.
Already. Yes.
Yeah, those things exist. That's why people do drugs in some ways, because it's a way to escape the harshness of life. Now the question, and on one end you have, you penalize people for doing that, for taking some kind of drug that alters their state of consciousness so they feel happy. On the other side, you have billionaires who go to the rainforest in the Amazon to have an ayahuasca experience, mm-hmm. which is legal in those countries. And they go there, they spend a lot of money, and they come back after, again, having some mind-altering experiences. Now, I haven't had any of those experiences, but I find that gelato and chocolate does the job for me, basically.
They make you happy.
Yeah,
gelato and
happy chocolate. Enough. Happy enough.
All right, let me ask you this. I have a few more questions.
But we need a reality pill, Phil.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm getting to.
Yeah.
A reality pill. Well, we do. Let me tell you what it is, because it's my next question.
Okay.
And it has to do with the metaverse. If we lived two lives, or could, one in reality and the other in the metaverse, and found out that we are happier in the metaverse, won't more people withdraw from reality? And can the metaverse be a very bad thing?
Of course it can.
That people lose touch with reality because it's not pleasurable enough.
Right. Somebody once said that unexamined life is not worth living. That's somebody, I think, was Socrates.
Right.
And in a sense, you've got to think about this, okay? How would you like to live in a world that was created by the nerds who basically never had a life, spent their lives playing Dungeons and Dragons and those kinds of board games. And now they've constructed a universe for you to experience. But these are the people who've never actually had lives themselves. They've never gone out there. They've never gone hiking. So the natural world is so much more of a beautiful world to me than this artificial world that we're creating, which is a pale, reductive version of reality that we're cheating ourselves. And this is what television, you could say, oh, the radio killed us, the television killed us, the internet killed us, and now the metaverse is going to kill our imagination. Of course, people will find ways to do things in these worlds, as we found, the internet gave us so many great things. So there will be things we learn from the metaverse, but is it a good idea to spend 12 hours a day immersed in this fake reality?
Yeah, we're beginning to live with the screen in our life. So this gets back to a fundamental question that both of you and I are dealing with, and that is, how about saying that the goal isn't happiness so much, but removing the sources of unhappiness? You and I are doing a project called the Wicked Seven. We got into that because we thought of different nightmares that might have, there's even a film now called Don't Look Up, which says that the planet is, a comet is coming our way, is going to destroy the Earth. There are a lot of nightmares one could have. But we worked more carefully on what we call the 7 really deep problems. And I want you to describe that work of ours, because the argument may be, let's reduce the agony that comes from hate, from corruption and power and so on. Let's work on removing the sources of unhappiness, and what is left is more happiness that way.
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, if you at the very base level say, look, human beings deserve to live their lives without tyranny, without their, basically, let's say you're born into this paradise of a world, only to discover that, somebody's killing it, that we've created artificial social structures that create great inequality, because children aren't born racist, they aren't born rich or poor, they certainly don't know the difference. It's just that once they start living in the world that we've constructed for them, all of a sudden these problems start happening. So you have, and the Wicked Seven for our viewers is basically a way of looking at the world's biggest problems and saying, well, why are they happening? And is there anything that can be done? And if it is, why aren't we doing it? So, and those 7 wicked problems that we chose were after we did a lot of research. And by the way, Phil, I got an 8th one as well that keeps popping up.
Right. There may be
I'll come to that one.
Yeah. Okay.
But the 7 wicked problems are the death of nature. So we're killing the planet in every way imaginable. So we've got to stop. How do we stop? That's what COP26 was supposed to be. John Kerry just said that we're not doing enough. All the things we talked about at COP26, even those things we aren't doing. So there's a problem. We're not able to execute on the promises that we make with each other. Second, inequality. So there's gender inequality, there's social inequality, there's economic inequality, discrimination of all sorts. That's another wicked problem. Hate and conflict. Now, at this point in our history, we find that we're using our, cool internet, Facebook, metaverse to do what? To create polarization and drive people against each other and manipulate them so they start fighting over things they never thought about before. So hate and conflict is something, and this year, 2022, is now being called the year of the coup, because we're going to see one after coups happening all over, not just Africa. We had a coup attempt in the United States, which we don't talk about. But if you look at the symptoms and the conditions and sort of the behavior of what defines a coup, we had a coup attempt in the US. So hate and conflict. And then another wicked seven problem is power and corruption. The idea that power is concentrated in the hands of a very few, and then these people use that power in corrupt ways to corrupt other processes that should give us more happiness, but don't. Work in technology. It's a wicked problem because there's less and less work, more and more technology. The digital divide is increasing every day. And we're creating a bigger gap between the haves and have-nots in terms of how work is actually practiced. Health and livelihoods. As I mentioned earlier, the US has no real working healthcare system. And it's only if you have money that you're able to actually afford it and if you have no money, well, you're dead. And that's not exactly civilized behavior. And yet we accept this because we have bought into this Ayn Rand disease that is pervasive now across North America, but especially in the United States. And then the last one is population and migration. One interesting thing here is, Phil, we talked about globalization as being something that would transform the world. Goods could flow back and forth, all this kind. But guess what didn't flow back and forth? People. We allowed goods to flow freely, but not people, not ideas, just goods. So we made a mistake, a giant mistake in the way we executed our globalization. Namely, we shifted all our manufacturing out of the US, out of Europe, to the Far East, and China especially, and in some way destroyed our middle class. Now, is that something that leads to more happiness when your society doesn't have a middle class, or has a middle class that isn't able to make a living or live better than its parents did? So I think that's where we killed the American dream, beginning with the 80s, when we started outsourcing our manufacturing and our services to India, and our so you could say, oh well, you're being over dramatic. Shouldn't they also have a chance to participate in the global economy? Yes, they should. Everybody should have a chance to be part of this global economy, but it should be on a fair playing field. And if you look at the way Africa is being developed, if you look at the way China and India are being developed, it's not a fair playing field. And I think that's at the root of all of this. You can't have happiness without justice. And you can't have peace without justice. So, in our book on brand activism, which is another book that we worked on together, Phil, we said that justice is the strategy. If you have a company that follows justice as a strategy in everything it does, okay, you might not make as much money in an unfair world, but you will at least have, let's put it this way, a direction that cannot be altered. So it's a very idealistic way of looking at things, but it's actually not. If you say economic justice, social justice, environmental justice, these three justices are part of our company's DNA. That's how you pursue justice at a societal, happiness at a societal level. At an individual level, it might be a little simpler. Well, I want my family to be fed. We want to have fun picnics on the weekend. We want reasonable working hours. We want good wages, and we want healthcare and food and shelter and all those basic necessities. So once you've got to that level, then maybe you want some entertainment and art. You want to be able to take a vacation. And these are all things that societies actually, in civilized countries at least, have as part of their rights as a worker. In the US, we don't have those rights because for some reason, and again, the reason is Ayn Rand disease, which I'm just coining here for fun, but really I'm very serious about it. I do, and Mark Twain had a thing called Sir Walter Scott disease. And that's where I'm pulling this idea from. And that idea was that the South was a noble place. The old South in the US was a noble place, and that the Civil War destroyed that nobility. and created the mess and the chaos of the New South. Well, guess what? We didn't destroy it enough, because that Walter Scott disease has now turned into this Ayn Rand disease, which says that individuals take precedence, rich individuals, in fact, take precedence over everything else. And in a sense, this is just another way of saying colonialism and is sort of the root of capitalism. And we never addressed the problems of that. And that's why we can't be happy as a society. So we need a truth and reconciliation committee, just like South Africa had, to basically look at how did we get here? Instead of banning debate, which is what some of our politicians are doing, where they say, oh, we cannot talk about anything that might hurt or offend someone from now on in class or anywhere else. Maybe we should say, let's bring all our worries and concerns and talk about them together, so that we can look at how did we get to this point. And that's really what this Wicked Seven thing is doing. We're looking at a wicked problem doesn't just happen, and it happens over time, and that the cause of it might be 200 years ago in history. And so that's sort of one way of saying the pursuit of happiness forces you to look backwards into time to see where do we start becoming, what's the root cause of our unhappiness today.
Thank you so much for describing that. There's an ecology to happiness with so many issues that come up. You can't just look at it in and of itself. What's the sources? What are the big burdens on that people feel and experience that prevent them from realizing their full and true self? And so our work on the Wicked Seven, and now maybe the Wicked Eight, is where we have to concentrate. We have to make a world a better place for all people, not for a few. I think we'll now have to end the short interview, but I enjoyed so much putting a set of questions to you, and I didn't give you any warnings, and you were very eloquent in sharing with us what will make the world a better place for all of us.
Well, one more thing, Phil. One more
Sure.
thing. Let me end with this idea that, as machines take over, how does a machine become? Should we be worried about the happiness of machines if they become a little more conscious? And what's going to happen to us? To be happy, we have to be creative. And this is where I think the root of happiness for human beings is to become not a consumer, but a creator. And
a producer rather than a consumer.
Right, not even a producer, but a creator, because a producer implies you're a robot producing, stamping out machines.
Okay.
But a creator, where you're creating something new, something that you yourself and no one else could have done. I think that's where happiness, the future of happiness, lies in creativity.
Very good. Well, thank you so much, Christian Sarkar, for not only answering these questions in a beautiful and eloquent way, but for being my dear friend. And,
thank you so much.
We will continue to work on these and other matters, and I hope people could follow even the work we're doing in Sicily with trying to regenerate a city. So many cities are falling apart, small towns are dying, and we're into the field called regenerative marketing. And I wrote much earlier about place marketing places, and we're continuing to want communities to be happy. You can work at it at the individual level, but there's the community level. We probably could search and find a lot of communities that are very happy, and we don't know why, but we better find out why and see if the lessons can be applied to other communities that are unhappy. Very good.
Thanks, Bill.